I'm Mia, I'm 30 years old and 12 years ago, the boy my family adopted, the boy everyone called a saint, assaulted me in my own bedroom. When I got pregnant, my stepmother didn't just call me a liar, she destroyed my life to protect him. Before I tell you about the moment I bought their bankruptcy debt and held their future in my hands, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far this story travels. To understand the end, you have to understand the beginning. You have to understand the house. It was a sprawling colonial estate in Connecticut, the kind with white pillars and manicured hedges that look like they've been cut with nail scissors. To the neighbors, the Miller family was the definition of the American dream. My father, Robert, ran a successful logistics company. My stepmother, Linda, chaired every charity board in the county. And then there was Caleb. Caleb was 20. He had been adopted by my father and Linda when he was a baby, long before my mother passed away, and Linda officially became the lady of the house. Caleb was the golden boy. He had a smile that could charm the stripes off a tiger, and a way of talking that made old ladies blush and businessmen open their checkbooks. He was finishing up his degree at an Ivy League school, captain of the lacrosse team, the pride and joy of the Miller name. And then there was me. 17. Quiet. The daughter of the first wife. The one who liked grease and gears more than garden parties. I spent my time in the garage, trying to keep my grandfather's old Ford truck running, while Linda complained that I smelled like a mechanic shop. Mia, look at your fingernails, she would say, sipping her morning tea. No decent man is going to want to hold a hand that looks like it's been digging in the dirt. I didn't care about decent men. I just wanted to graduate, get my engineering degree, and get out of that house. Because inside those walls, the air was thick. It was suffocating. And mostly, it was because of Caleb. Caleb wasn't the brother everyone thought he was. When the cameras were off, when the guests left, his smile changed. It wasn't charming anymore, it was predatory. He'd walk into my room without knocking, lingering in the doorway while I was doing homework. He'd make comments about how my body was filling out, comments that made my skin crawl. I told my father once. We were in his study. He was looking over spreadsheets, stressed about the quarterly earnings. Dad, Caleb makes me uncomfortable, I said, my voice small. He doesn't respect my privacy. My father didn't even look up. Mia, don't be dramatic. Caleb loves you. He's just teasing. Brothers tease. It's what they do. He's not my brother, I muttered. He is family, my father snapped, finally looking at me. And in this family, we support each other. We don't make up stories because we're jealous of the attention someone else gets. Jealous. That was the narrative Linda had spun. That I was jealous of Caleb's success, jealous of his charm. So I stopped talking. I started locking my door. I started wearing baggy clothes around the house. But locks only work if someone doesn't have the key. It was a Tuesday in November. A storm was battering the coast, the wind howling against the siding like a wild animal trying to get in. My father was away on business in Chicago. Linda was at a gala for the hospital foundation. The house was empty. Just me and the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable. Or so I thought. Mrs. Gable left at 8 p.m. I went upstairs, locked my door, and put on my headphones, trying to drown out the thunder with music. I fell asleep around 10. I woke up to the smell of whiskey and expensive cologne. The room was dark, illuminated only by the flashes of lightning outside. I felt a weight on the bed. My heart hammered against my ribs. Caleb. I whispered, pulling the duvet up to my chin. Get out. He chuckled. It was a low, wet sound. Don't be like that, Mia. Mom and Dad are gone. It's just us. I said get out. I reached for the lamp but he caught my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong, painful. You know you want this, he slurred. I see how you look at me. Little Miss Perfect, acting all shy. I know what you are. Caleb, stop. I'm screaming. Scream all you want, he hissed, his face inches from mine. Nobody's home. Nobody's coming. The next hour is a blur of terror and pain that I have spent 12 years trying to scrub from my memory. I fought. I scratched. I bit. But he was 20, an athlete, and fueled by alcohol. I was 17 and terrified. When he was done, he stood up, adjusted his belt, and looked down at me with cold, dead eyes. You say a word, he whispered, and I'll tell everyone you begged for it. Who are they going to believe? The honor student or the jealous little brat? He left the room, whistling. I laid there in the dark, listening to the rain, feeling like my soul had been ripped out of my body. I took 3 showers that night. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw and bleeding, but I still felt dirty. The next morning, Caleb was at the breakfast table, eating pancakes like nothing had happened. He smiled at me when I walked in. Morning, sis. You look tired. I wanted to vomit. I grabbed a piece of toast and ran to the bus stop. I lived in a state of frozen panic for weeks. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time he looked at me, I flinched. And then, 6 weeks later, I missed my period. I tried to tell myself it was stress. I tried to tell myself it was just a fluctuation. But deep down, I knew. I bought a test at the pharmacy 3 towns over, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses so no one would recognize me. I took it in the gas station bathroom. 2 pink lines. I sat on the dirty tile floor of that gas station and cried until my throat burned. I was pregnant. With my attacker's baby. I knew I couldn't keep it secret. I knew I had to tell my father. He was my dad. He was weak, sure, but he was my dad. He would protect me. He had to. I waited until Sunday dinner. It was the only time everyone was required to be at the table. Linda had made a roast. Caleb was talking about his internship offers. My father was pouring wine. I need to say something, I said. My voice shook so hard the silverware rattled on the table. Everyone stopped eating. Linda sighed, putting down her fork. What is it now, Mia? Can we not have one peaceful meal? I'm pregnant, I said. The silence was deafening. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall. My father dropped his wine glass. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth like blood. What did you say? He whispered. I'm pregnant, I repeated, tears streaming down my face. And Caleb is the father. I looked at Caleb. I expected him to deny it immediately. I expected anger. But what he did was worse. He dropped his head into his hands and started to sob. I'm so sorry, Caleb cried, his shoulders shaking. I'm so sorry, Dad. Mom. I didn't want to. She kept coming into my room, she wouldn't take no for an answer. My jaw dropped. What? You're lying. You broke into my room. You hurt me. She threatened me. Caleb looked up, tears streaming down his handsome face. She said if I didn't sleep with her, she'd tell everyone I abused her. She said she'd ruin my future. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. You liar. I screamed, standing up. You sick, twisted liar. I looked at my father. Dad, please. You know me. You know I would never. He's lying. My father looked from me to Caleb. He looked at his golden boy, the future of the company, weeping in remorse. Then he looked at me, the difficult daughter. But before he could speak, Linda stood up. Her face was twisted in a rage I had never seen before. She walked around the table, grabbed me by the hair, and slapped me across the face. The sound was like a gunshot. You slut. Linda screamed. You filthy little slut. I knew it. I've seen the way you walk around this house in your little shorts. You've been trying to seduce him for years. You're jealous of him, and you wanted to bring him down to your level. No. Linda, please. I held my cheek, tasting blood. Get out, she hissed. Get out of my house. You will not destroy my son's life with your lies and your bastard child. I looked at my father. Dad? Are you going to let her do this? Dad, he raped me. My father stood up. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the wine stain on the tablecloth. You heard your mother, he said softly. She's not my mother. I screamed. You are not my daughter, he said, his voice trembling. Not anymore. Pack your things. I want you gone tonight. It's storming, I whispered, disbelief washing over me. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem, he said, turning his back on me to comfort Caleb. I ran upstairs. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, blinded by tears. I grabbed my savings jar, maybe $300 from odd jobs, and my grandfather's old leather jacket. When I came back down, Linda was waiting at the door. She opened it. The rain was coming down in sheets. If you ever try to contact us, she said, her voice icy calm, I will ruin you. I have lawyers who will make sure the world knows you as a predator who preyed on her innocent brother. Do you understand? I didn't answer. I stepped out into the rain. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind me. I heard the lock turn. I stood there for a moment, looking at the house that had been my home. The warm light spilled out from the windows. Inside, they were probably comforting Caleb. Inside, they were safe. Outside, I was 17, pregnant, and alone in the dark. I started walking down the long driveway, the gravel crunching under my wet sneakers. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. But I didn't know that the worst part of the night wasn't over. I didn't know that by morning, I would lose the only thing I had left. The rain in Connecticut in November isn't just wet, it's a physical assault. It feels like needles of ice piercing your skin. I walked for hours. My duffel bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds, the strap digging into my shoulder. Cars passed me, their headlights blinding me for a second before leaving me in darker darkness, spraying dirty water onto my jeans. No one stopped. Why would they? I was just a shadow on the side of the road. My stomach had been cramping since I left the house, a dull ache that I attributed to the stress and the cold. But about 4 miles down Route 9, the ache turned into a sharp, twisting knife. I gasped and doubled over, clutching a guardrail. A wave of dizziness hit me so hard the world tilted sideways. I stumbled toward an old bus shelter, just a plexiglass box with a graffiti-covered bench. I collapsed onto the cold metal. The pain came in waves, tearing through my lower abdomen. It was worse than anything I had ever felt. I curled into a ball, shivering violently, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they would crack. Please, I whispered to the empty road. Please, not this. Not this too. But the universe wasn't listening. Or maybe it was, and this was its cruel way of solving a problem I wasn't equipped to handle. I felt a warmth spreading through my jeans, sticky and terrifying. I knew what was happening. I was losing the baby. The physical pain was blinding, but the emotional hollowness that followed was worse. I lay there for hours, drifting in and out of consciousness. I hallucinated that my mother, my real mother, was there, stroking my wet hair, telling me it was time to come home. I woke up to the sound of a dog barking and the smell of diesel. The rain had stopped. The sky was a bruised purple color, threatening dawn. A moon was standing over me. He was huge, shaped like a beer barrel, with a beard that looked like a bird's nest made of steel wool. He was wearing coveralls that were more oil than fabric. You alive, girl, he grunted. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. I tried to sit up but the pain shot through me again. I groaned. You're bleeding, he said, pointing a calloused finger at the bench. I looked down. There was blood. So much blood. Please, I croaked. Help me. The man didn't hesitate. He scooped me up like I weighed nothing. He smelled like old oil, tobacco, and peppermint. He carried me to an old tow truck idling on the shoulder. I'm taking you to Doc Miller's. Not a hospital. You look like you got trouble you don't want on record. He drove me to a small, run-down clinic on the edge of the industrial district. The doctor wasn't a Miller relation, just a coincidental name that made me flinch. He was an unlicensed practitioner who stitched up gang members and treated undocumented workers. He asked no questions. The procedure was quick. The miscarriage was complete. There was nothing to save. When I woke up properly, I was in a small room that smelled of motor oil and coffee. It was the back office of a garage. I was lying on an old leather sofa covered with a clean quilt. The big man was sitting at a desk, disassembling a carburetor. You're awake, he said without looking up. Doc says you lost a baby. Says you're lucky you didn't bleed out. I stared at the ceiling. It's gone. Yeah. It's gone. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears. I felt scoured. Empty. Like a house after a fire. I'm Andy, he said. This is my shop. You got a name? Mia, I whispered. You got somewhere to go, Mia. I shook my head. Andy sighed. He put down the carburetor and looked at me. His eyes were surprisingly kind, buried under bushy eyebrows. Well, you can't stay here forever. But you can stay until you can walk straight. I need someone to answer the phones. I hate talking to people. That temporary stay turned into 12 years. Andy wasn't just a mechanic, he was a genius. He had been an engineer for a racing team back in the day before life chewed him up and spit him out. He saw something in me. Maybe it was the way I watched him work. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't flinch at the dirt. Recovery was slow. My body healed faster than my mind. For months, I would wake up screaming, feeling Caleb's hands on me. Andy never asked. He would just turn up the radio in the shop or slide a cup of hot cocoa onto the workbench next to me. One afternoon, about 3 months after the incident, I was sweeping the floor. Andy was cursing at a 1967 Mustang. The engine was running rough, a distinctive chug-chug hiss. Timing belt? I asked, leaning on the broom. Andy glared at me. I checked the timing belt. It's fine. It's not the belt, I said, closing my eyes and listening. I focused on the sound. It was like music to me. I could hear the individual components moving. It's the number 4 cylinder. The intake valve is sticking. I can hear the tap. Andy looked at me like I had grown a second head. You can hear a valve tap over this noise. Yes. It's a high-pitched click, right at the top of the cycle. He grunted, popped the valve cover and checked. 5 minutes later, he looked at me, grease smudged on his nose. Well, I'll be damned. You got ears like a bat, kid. That was the turning point. Andy started teaching me everything. He taught me how to feel the engine's vibration to diagnose a misfire. He taught me how to weld aluminum until my beads were like stacks of dimes. He taught me that cars make sense in a way people never do. A car doesn't lie. If a car is broken, there's a reason. If you fix it, it runs. It's fair. I threw myself into the work. I worked 16 hours a day. I took my GED. I read engineering textbooks at night until my eyes blurred. I stopped being Mia Miller, the victim. I became Mia Sterling. I took my mother's maiden name. I cut my hair into a sharp, angular bob. I traded my hoodies for leather jackets and steel-toed boots. Every time I sanded a patch of rust, I imagined I was sanding away my past. Every time I hammered out a dent, I was hammering out the memory of Linda's slap. I kept tabs on them, of course. You can't hate someone that much without watching them. I saw the social media posts. The perfect family photos. Caleb graduating. Caleb getting an executive position at my father's company. Linda hosting galas. They looked happy. They looked prosperous. They had erased me completely. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that rust never sleeps. It eats away at the metal, hidden under the paint, until one day, the whole structure collapses. I waited. I built my skills. I saved every penny. I moved from Andy's couch to a small apartment, then to a condo. I started taking on my own clients, high-end restoration jobs. Ferrari. Porsche. Rolls-Royce. The wealthy elite realized that the girl at Andy's shop was a magician. 12 years passed. Andy retired, leaving the shop to me, which I transformed into Sterling Bespoke, the premier restoration house on the East Coast. Then, the crack in their armor appeared. It started as a rumor in the industry. Miller Logistics was in trouble. Bad investments. Lost contracts. They were hemorrhaging money. Then came the foreclosure notices. I watched it all from my glass-walled office, sipping espresso. And finally, the opportunity one had been waiting for arrived. My contact at the auction house called me. "Mia," he said. "You're not going to believe this. Robert Miller just listed the Phantom." My heart stopped. The Phantom. The 1920 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. It was my grandfather's pride and joy. It was the one asset the family had vowed never to sell. It was worth millions, but only if it was perfect. "What condition is it in?" I asked, my voice steady. "Terrible. It's been sitting in a damp barn for a decade. The engine is seized. The wood is rotting. They need it restored for the Pebble Beach auction next month, or they go bankrupt. They're desperate. They need the best." I smiled. I looked at my reflection in the window. I didn't look like the scared 17-year-old girl anymore. I looked like a shark. "Tell them Sterling Bespoke will take the job," I said. "But tell them the owner is very private. Tell them I'll only meet to sign the contract." It was time to go home. 12 years is a long time. It's enough time for a cell to regenerate, for a sapling to become a tree, and for a frightened girl to become a nightmare. My headquarters, Sterling Bespoke, was located in a repurposed industrial warehouse in the meatpacking district. It didn't look like a mechanic's shop. It looked like an art gallery. The floors were polished black concrete. The lighting was surgical. And the art on display consisted of multi-million-dollar machines, a vintage Jaguar E-Type in British racing green, a Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing with its doors open like a bird taking flight. I stepped out of my office, the heels of my Louboutins clicking sharply against the floor. My staff, mostly men, all older than me, all fiercely loyal, looked up. "Marco," I called out to my head mechanic. "The paint on the Aston Martin isn't curing right. The humidity in the booth is off by 2%. Fix it." "On it, boss," Marco said, scrambling toward the control panel. I walked over to the bay where a Ferrari 250 GTO was sitting. This car was worth more than most small countries. I ran my hand along the fender. It was flawless. "Julian," I said without turning around. Julian, my head of security and private investigator, stepped out of the shadows. He was a former Fed, quiet and dangerous. He was the only one who knew the full story. "The file on the Millers," he said, handing me a thick manila envelope. I took it and walked back into my office, tossing it onto my glass desk. I sat down and opened it. The photos spilled out. Robert Miller looked like a ghost of the man I remembered. His hair was white, his face gaunt. Stress had carved deep canyons into his skin. Linda looked desperate. The Botox couldn't hide the panic in her eyes anymore. They were drowning in debt. Lawsuits from suppliers. Unpaid taxes. They had leveraged everything to keep up appearances. And Caleb. I picked up his photo. He was 32 now. He had filled out, wearing expensive Italian suits that likely cost more than my first car. He looked successful. But I looked closer. The eyes were the same. Dead. Hungry. There were notes in Julian's file about him, gambling debts, settlements paid quietly to former secretaries, an HR complaint that had been buried. He hadn't changed. He had just gotten better at hiding it. They are on the brink, Julian said, standing by the door. If the Rolls-Royce doesn't sell for top dollar at the auction, the bank takes the house, the company, everything. They are projecting a $5 million shortfall. And the car? It's a wreck. The engine block is cracked. The interior is moldy. No one else will touch it on this timeline. They need a miracle. I am their miracle, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. And I'm going to cost them everything. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the intermediary. Set up the meeting, I said. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tell them they are meeting with the CEO of Sterling Bespoke. And tell them my fee is double the market rate paid up front. They don't have the cash, Mia, Julian warned. They'll find it. They'll borrow against their life insurance if they have to. Desperation makes people creative. That night, I couldn't sleep. I drove my Porsche 911 Targa out to the coast. I parked on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the same ocean that battered the house the night I left. I rolled down the window and let the salt air hit my face. I thought about the baby. I thought about the life that could have been. If they had believed me. If my father had stood up for me. Maybe I would be an engineer at his company now. Maybe I would be coming over for Sunday dinner with a husband and a child. But that timeline was dead. They killed it. I touched the scar on my stomach again. It was my anchor. It reminded me that mercy was a luxury I couldn't afford. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to war. A tailored black suit, sharp enough to cut glass. Stilettos. And oversized dark sunglasses that I intended to keep on. I checked my appearance in the mirror. The Mia Miller they knew, soft, round-faced, wearing baggy jeans, was gone. Mia Sterling was sleek, expensive, and intimidating. I arrived at the showroom 10 minutes early. I wanted to be seated behind my desk when they walked in. The power dynamic had to be absolute. At 10 a.m. sharp, the buzzer rang. Mr. and Mrs. Miller and Mr. Caleb Miller are here, my receptionist said. Send them in. The double doors opened. My father walked in first. He was leaning on a cane. He looked smaller than I remembered. Defeated. Linda was next, clutching a Chanel bag that was probably a fake. I could spot the stitching from across the room. She was trying to look haughty, looking down her nose at the warehouse surroundings, but her hands were shaking. And then Caleb. He sauntered in, looking around with a smirk, assessing the value of the cars on the floor. They approached my desk. I didn't stand up. I sat back in my leather chair, my face impassive behind my dark glasses. Good morning, I said. I pitched my voice slightly lower, colder than my natural tone. Ms. Sterling, my father asked, squinting. We were told you're the best. I am, I said. Sit. They sat. They looked uncomfortable in the minimalist chairs. They looked at me, scanning my face. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Recognize me, I thought. Look at me. Look at your daughter. But they didn't. They saw the expensive suit. They saw the sunglasses. They saw the CEO. They didn't see Mia. Why would they? In their minds, Mia was dead, or working at a diner somewhere, ruined and forgotten. They couldn't conceive that the powerful woman holding their lifeline was the girl they threw out in the rain. We have a car, Caleb spoke up, leaning forward. He flashed that practiced smile, the one that used to make me sick. A 1920 Silver Ghost. It's a family heirloom. We need it restored to concours condition for the Pebble Beach auction. I've seen the photos, I said, cutting him off. It's garbage. You let a piece of history rot in a barn. It's shameful. Linda bristled. Excuse me. That car has been in our family for generations. We have had financial priorities. It shows, I said. The restoration will cost $200,000. Plus parts. And I want 50% now. That's outrageous. Linda gasped. You were told I'm the best. The auction is in 3 weeks. No one else can do this. Do you want to save your company or not? My father put a hand on Linda's arm. We'll pay it, he whispered. We have to. Good, I said. I slid a contract across the desk. There is one more condition. What is it? Caleb asked. He was staring at me now, not with recognition, but with that familiar, creepy interest. He was checking me out. Disgusting. This car is complex. I need a representative from the family here every day to approve parts and labor decisions immediately. We don't have time for phone tag. I'll do it, Caleb said quickly. He licked his lips. I'd love to supervise the process. I knew he would. He couldn't resist a woman in power. He wanted to conquer me. Fine, I said. Sign here. My father signed with a shaking hand. He didn't even read the fine print. If he had, he might have noticed the clause about full liability for undisclosed damages. We start tomorrow, I said, standing up to dismiss them. As they walked out, Caleb lingered at the door. He turned back and winked. Looking forward to working with you, Ms. Sterling. I waited until the door clicked shut. Then I grabbed the trash can and dry heaved. The rage was back. It was hot and violent. But this time, I wasn't going to run. I was going to use it. I pressed the intercom button. Julian. It's done. Put a tracker on Caleb's car. I want to know everywhere he goes. And find out who his current assistant is. Already on it, Julian replied. Her name is Elena. She's 22. Just started last month. Is she safe? For now. But he's escalating. He's sending her late-night texts. Not on my watch, I whispered. I walked out to the shop floor. My team was already rolling the rusted hulk of the Rolls-Royce into the main bay. It looked like a corpse. Strip it down, I ordered. Every nut. Every bolt. I want this car to look like it just rolled off the line in Derby. I was going to build them the perfect car. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. And then, at the moment they thought they were saved, I was going to drive it straight over them. The restoration of the Silver Ghost began with violence. We didn't just clean it, we tore it apart. Torches flared, grinders screamed against rusted metal, and the air filled with the smell of burning oxidation. It was fitting. True to the contract, Caleb showed up the next morning at 9 a.m. He was wearing a navy blazer and loafers, looking entirely out of place amidst the sparks and grease. I was under the hood of the Rolls, wearing my coveralls, my hair tied back. I wanted him to see this side of me. The capable side. The side that wasn't afraid to get dirty. Impressive, his voice came from behind me. I stood up and wiped my hands on a rag, not bothering to smile. Mr. Miller. You're on time. Call me Caleb, he said, stepping closer, invading my personal space just like he used to. And please, call me whatever you like. I'll call you client, I said flatly. Look at this engine block. The cylinder head is cracked. We need to cast a new one. It's going to cost an extra 10 grand. He waved his hand dismissively. Money isn't an issue. Do what you have to do. He was lying, of course. Julian had told me they had taken out a high-interest payday loan just to cover the deposit. But Caleb couldn't look poor in front of a pretty woman. So he said, leaning against a workbench, trying to look casual but getting oil on his expensive sleeve. How does a woman like you end up in a place like this? It's a bit rugged, isn't it? A woman like me? I challenged, crossing my arms. You know. Beautiful. Elegant. You seem more suited for a boardroom than a garage. I own the garage, Caleb. And the boardroom. I built this empire with my own hands. Something you might not know much about. It was a dig, but he took it as flirtation. He laughed. Feisty. I like that. You remind me of someone I used to know. But she didn't have your fire. My blood ran cold. She didn't have your fire. He was talking about me. The old me. The girl he broke. To him, she was just a pale, weak memory. Is that so? I turned back to the car to hide the hatred in my eyes. Well, I'm one of a kind. Over the next 2 weeks, the game continued. Caleb came every day. He brought me coffee, which I poured down the drain. He tried to buy me lunch. He postured, bragged, and preened. He told me about his business successes, lies, his crazy ex-girlfriends, victims, and his vision for the future. He never mentioned a sister. It was as if I had never existed. Meanwhile, Julian was feeding me intel on Elena, Caleb's assistant. The pattern was identical. The late meetings. The accidental touches. The threats disguised as career advice. He's going to make a move soon, Julian told me one evening. He's invited her to a business trip next weekend. He won't make it to next weekend, I said. We end this on Friday. I needed to catch him. Not just for me, but for Elena. And to do that, I needed to be the bait. On Thursday, the Rolls-Royce was nearly finished. It was breathtaking. The silver paint shone like liquid mercury. The leather interior smelled of wealth and old money. Caleb was staring at the car, but his eyes kept drifting to me. It's a masterpiece, he said. You're a genius, Mia. Can I call you Mia? The car is ready for final testing, I said, ignoring his question. But we need to discuss the final payment schedule. I was thinking maybe we could discuss it over dinner. My place. I prefer privacy when discussing large sums. It was the trap. Simple. Crudely effective for a narcissist like him. His eyes lit up. He looked like a wolf that just saw a gate left open. Dinner? I'd love that. Just us. Just us, I lied. I'll bring the wine, he said, grinning. I gave him the address of my estate in the Hamptons. It was isolated, impressive, and perfectly wired for sound and video. Before he left, I saw him text someone. Julian intercepted it a minute later. It was to Elena, trip cancelled. Something better came up. Don't wait up. I felt sick but also vindicated. He was predictable. That afternoon, I drove to the office building where Miller Logistics was located. I waited in the parking lot until I saw a young woman with red-rimmed eyes walking to her car. Elena. I got out of my Porsche and approached her. Elena? She jumped, clutching her purse. Yes. My name is Mia Sterling. I'm working with Caleb Miller. Her face went pale. I don't know anything about that. I just work there. I know, I said, taking off my sunglasses. I know he touches you. I know he threatens you. I know you're scared. She started to cry. Please, I need this job. My mom is sick. He told me if I say anything, he'll make sure I never work again. He said the same thing to me 12 years ago, I said softly. She looked at me confused. You? He's not going to hurt you anymore, Elena. But I need your help. I'm going to take him down. Tonight. Will you help me? She hesitated, looking at my expensive car, my clothes, and then into my eyes. She saw the truth there. What do I have to do? She whispered. Just tell the truth, I said. When the time comes, just tell the truth. My Hamptons estate was designed for intimidation. High ceilings, modern art, and an ocean view that screamed old money. I had set the stage carefully. Low lights. Jazz playing softly. A bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux breathing on the table. Hidden cameras were positioned in the living room, the dining room, and the terrace. Julian was in the security van a mile down the road, monitoring the feeds. Caleb arrived at 8 p.m. He brought flowers. Lilies. I almost laughed. Lilies were funeral flowers. For the beautiful hostess, he said, handing them to me. He was wearing a tuxedo, clearly anticipating that this was a celebration. Or a seduction. Thank you, Caleb. I tossed them onto a side table without looking at them. Drink? Whiskey. Neat. I poured him a generous glass of Macallan 25. I poured myself sparkling water with a splash of cranberry juice to look like wine. I needed a clear head. We sat on the terrace, listening to the waves. So, Caleb said, loosening his tie. The car is done. The auction is in 2 days. We're going to make a fortune. And now. I'm here with you. I have to say, life is good. Is it? I asked, swirling my glass. You seem to have it all figured out. But tell me, Caleb. How does the golden boy survive when the company is failing? I saw the books. You guys are drowning. He laughed, arrogant and dismissive. The company is just a vehicle, Mia. Like that old car. You drive it until it breaks, then you get a new one. Or you find someone to fix it for you. He winked. My parents are old. They worry too much. But me? I'm a survivor. I always land on my feet. Is that right? And what about the people you step on to land there? He took a large swig of whiskey. The alcohol was hitting him fast on an empty stomach. People are rungs on a ladder, sweetheart. You step on them to get higher. If they break, that's their fault for being weak. Like your sister. I dropped the bomb quietly. He froze. The glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Who told you about her? People talk. They say you had a sister. Mia. She got pregnant and ran away. He scoffed, relaxing again. Oh, her. Yeah. A tragedy. She was disturbed. Mentally unstable. She had this obsession with me. It was gross, honestly. When I rejected her, she made up some story, got knocked up by some townie, and ran off in shame. My knuckles turned white around my glass. Liar. She accused you of assault, didn't she? I pushed. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. Why are we talking about ancient history? She's gone. Probably dead in a ditch somewhere. And good riddance. She was a leech. My mother knew it. Dad was too soft, but Mom knew I was the future. She protected the investment. Protected the investment. That's all I was to them. A bad asset. It sounds like you got away with it, I said, forcing a smile. I like a man who knows how to handle difficult situations. He took the bait. He leaned in, his ego swelling. I can handle anything. You know that girl, she was pathetic. Crying, begging. No, Caleb, stop. But she didn't mean it. They never mean it. My stomach lurched. I had it. The confession. Is that what you tell Elena? I asked. He blinked, confused by the sudden shift. Elena? My assistant. She's just a toy. A placeholder until something better comes along. Like you. He reached out and put his hand on my knee. His palm was hot and sweaty. You and me, Mia, he murmured. We're the same. We're predators. We take what we want. I stood up abruptly, knocking his hand away. We are nothing alike, Caleb. He frowned, standing up too. He swayed slightly. What's wrong? Playing hard to get? I like the chase. I think you should leave, I said. The deal is done. His face darkened. The charm evaporated, replaced by the monster I remembered. Don't play games with me. You invited me here. You wanted this. He stepped toward me, aggressive. You think because you have money you can tease me. I'm Caleb Miller. I get what I want. He grabbed my arm. Get your hands off me. I shouted. Make me, he sneered. Suddenly, the terrace doors burst open. Julian and two large security guards stepped out. Step away from her, Julian commanded, his hand near his holster. Caleb jumped back, looking around wildly. What the hell? Who are these people? My security, I said, smoothing my dress. And you are trespassing. Caleb laughed nervously. Okay. Crazy bitch. I'm leaving. We have the car anyway. See you at the auction. He stumbled toward the door, pausing to look back at me. You missed out on a good thing, Mia. You could have been part of the winning team. I watched him leave. As soon as his taillights disappeared, Julian walked over. We got it? I asked. Every word, Julian said. Audio and video. Crystal clear. They never mean it. That line alone will put him away for 20 years. I sat down on the patio chair, shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. Send the footage to the district attorney. Julian asked. No, I said. Not yet. If we arrest him now, the auction is cancelled. The assets are frozen. My father and Linda might wiggle out of it, claim they didn't know. So what's the plan? We wait for the auction, I said. We let them think they've won. We let them stand on that stage in front of all their high society friends. And then, we burn it all down. I picked up the glass of whiskey Caleb had left, looked at it with disgust, and poured it over the balcony railing. Prepare the presentation, I told Julian. And call the DNA lab. I want the results expedited. You got the sample. From his glass, I said. And I got Linda's hair from her coat when she came to the shop. It's time to prove the family secret. I looked out at the dark ocean. The storm was coming. And this time, I was the one bringing the rain. The Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance is the Super Bowl of the car world. It's where billionaires come to trade toys that cost more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. The air smells of sea salt, champagne, and desperate ambition. I arrived in my own LaFerrari, pulling up to the VIP entrance. The paparazzi flashbulbs popped, but I ignored them. I was wearing a blood-red dress today. Red for war. I made my way to the backstage holding area. I could see the Miller family through the curtains. They were preening. Linda was wearing a silver gown that matched the Rolls-Royce. She was holding court with a group of bankers, laughing that fake, tinkling laugh. Yes, it was a labor of love, I heard her say. We've been saving this car for the right moment. It's so hard to part with it, but we feel it belongs in a museum. Liar. You're selling it to pay off your gambling debts. Robert was standing next to the car, looking proud. He patted the fender of the silver Ghost. It looked magnificent under the stage lights. My team had done incredible work. It was flawless. And Caleb? Caleb was drinking champagne, looking smug. He scanned the crowd, probably looking for his next victim. The auctioneer took the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed. The moment you've been waiting for. Lot 45. The 1920 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. A true piece of automotive history, presented by the Miller family and restored by the world-renowned Sterling Bespoke. Applause rippled through the tent. Please welcome to the stage, the restoration artist behind this masterpiece, Ms. Mia Sterling. This was it. I walked up the stairs. The spotlight hit me. I could see the Millers turn. At first, they just smiled politely. Then, as I got closer, the smiles faltered. I wasn't wearing sunglasses today. I stopped 5 feet away from them. I looked Linda dead in the eye. Hello, Linda, I said into the microphone. Hello, Dad. The word Dad echoed through the speakers. Robert squinted. He leaned forward. Mia, he whispered. Oh my God, Linda gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Mia. It's been a long time, I said, turning to the audience. 12 years, to be exact. Since the night I was thrown out of this family's home into a storm. The crowd went silent. The auctioneer looked confused. Ms. Sterling, please, tell us about the car. I will, I said. This car is beautiful on the outside. Flawless. Just like the Miller family tries to be. But if you lift the hood, sometimes you find rot. I clicked the clicker in my hand. I had replaced the promotional video. The giant screen behind us flickered. It wasn't footage of the engine. It was the footage from my terrace. Caleb's face appeared, huge and high definition. He was drunk, arrogant. She was pathetic. Crying, begging. No, Caleb, stop. But she didn't mean it. They never mean it. The crowd gasped. A collective murmur of horror swept through the tent. Caleb dropped his champagne glass. It shattered. He lunged toward me. Turn it off. She faked it. It's AI. It's a lie. My security guards stepped out from the curtains, blocking him. On screen, the video cut to Elena. She was sitting in a chair, crying. He told me if I didn't sleep with him, he'd fire me. He cornered me in the file room. You monster, someone shouted from the crowd. Linda grabbed Robert's arm. Bob, do something. She's ruining us. Robert looked paralyzed. He was staring at the screen, then at Caleb, then at me. But that's not all, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. You see, for 12 years I wondered why. Why did my stepmother protect him so fiercely? Why did she throw her husband's daughter out to protect an adopted son? It didn't make sense. Until I ran the DNA. I clicked the remote again. A document appeared on the screen. A paternity test. Caleb isn't adopted, I said clearly. Caleb is Linda's biological son. From a relationship she had before she met you, Dad. She lied to you. She made you adopt her own illegitimate child, pretending he was a stranger, so she could use your money to raise him. The silence now was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. Robert slowly turned to look at Linda. His face was gray. "Linda," he croaked. "Is this true?" Linda's face crumbled. The mask of the society queen fell away, leaving a terrified, cornered woman. "Bob, I had to. I couldn't leave him. You wouldn't have married me if you knew I had a child out of wedlock. I did it for us." "You did it for you," Robert roared. It was the first time I had ever heard him yell at her. "You made me raise another man's son. And you let him destroy my daughter. He's your son in every way that matters." Linda screamed. Mia was just a jealous little brat. Mia was carrying his child. I shouted back, tears finally stinging my eyes. "I was pregnant, Dad. And she knew it. She knew if the baby was born, the DNA would prove Caleb was her son because the baby would be related to her. That's why she kicked me out. She wasn't protecting Caleb's reputation, she was protecting her lie." Robert looked like he had been shot. He clutched his chest. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in a decade. He saw the scars. He saw the strength. And he saw the truth. "My grandchild," he whispered. You killed my grandchild." "She didn't just kill the baby," I said coldly. "She killed the family." Sirens wailed in the distance. Julian had timed it perfectly. Police officers swarmed the stage. "Caleb Miller, you are under arrest for sexual assault and extortion," an officer shouted. Caleb tried to run, but my security guard tackled him. He was screaming, cursing, blaming everyone but himself. "Mom. Do something. Mom." Linda was sobbing, clinging to Robert, but he pushed her away with a force I didn't know he had. She fell to the floor in her silver gown, a heap of ruined vanity. "Don't touch me," Robert spat at her. "Don't you ever touch me again." The police handcuffed Caleb. Another officer approached Linda. "Mrs. Miller, we have questions regarding fraud and falsifying adoption records." I stood there center stage, watching them fall. The Golden family was being dragged away in handcuffs. The auction was cancelled. The crowd was in shock, filming everything on their phones. Robert stood alone on the stage. He looked at the Rolls-Royce. Then he looked at me. He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out. "Mia," he sobbed. "Mia, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had let me walk out into the rain. "You should have known," I said. "You're a father. It was your job to know." I turned my back on him and walked off the stage. You might think that walking off that stage was the end of it. You might think the credits rolled, the music played, and I drove off into the sunset right then and there. But real life doesn't work like a movie. When you drop a bomb on a foundation that's been rotting for decades, the dust doesn't settle in minutes. It takes months. And I made sure I was there to watch every single particle fall. The aftermath of the auction was chaos. Absolute, unadulterated chaos. The footage of Caleb's confession went viral before the police even got him into the squad car. #Miller scandal was trending worldwide within the hour. By the next morning, the stock price of Miller Logistics had plummeted to pennies. Investors fled like rats from a sinking ship. The creditors, who had been holding off in hopes of the auction money, descended like vultures. I didn't have to lift a finger. I just sat in my office at Sterling Bespoke, drinking tea, watching the empire my father had sacrificed his daughter for turn to ash. Caleb's bail was denied. It turns out, when you are recorded confessing to multiple sexual assaults and your DNA links you to a fraud scheme, judges aren't inclined to be lenient. The district attorney, armed with the testimony of Elena and 3 other women who came forward after seeing the news, built a case that was watertight. Caleb tried to cut a deal. He tried to blame his mother. He tried to blame alcohol. But for the first time in his life, his charm didn't work. The golden boy was just another inmate number. Linda fared no better. The fraud investigation revealed that she had been siphoning money from my father's company for years to pay off Caleb's gambling debts and hush money settlements. She was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and falsifying legal documents regarding Caleb's adoption. The society friends she had spent her life trying to impress were the first to testify against her. She was left with nothing, no money, no status, no friends. Just a court-appointed lawyer who looked at her with disdain. And then there was Robert. My father. He wasn't arrested. Being a blind, weak fool isn't a crime in the eyes of the law. But it is a death sentence for the soul. He had a massive heart attack that night on stage. He spent 3 weeks in the ICU. When he woke up, he had nothing. The bank had seized the estate. The company was in liquidation. His wife was facing 10 years in prison. His son, the son he chose over me, was a predator. I didn't visit him for a month. I let him sit in that silence. I let him stare at the sterile hospital ceiling and replay the last 12 years in his mind. I wanted him to feel every second of the abandonment I had felt in that garage. But eventually, I got the call. It wasn't from him. It was from the hospital social worker. Ms. Sterling, she said, her voice gentle. Mr. Miller is being discharged to a state-funded assisted living facility. He has listed you as his only emergency contact. He is asking for you. I drove to the hospital. Not because I wanted to offer him a ride, but because I needed to close the book. I walked into his room. He looked 20 years older than he had at the auction. He was frail, sitting in a wheelchair, holding a plastic bag containing his few remaining personal effects. When he saw me, he started to cry. It wasn't the dignified weeping of a tragedy, it was the ugly, desperate sobbing of a broken man. Mia, he choked out. Mia, thank God. I thought you wouldn't come. I stood at the foot of the bed, my arms crossed. I didn't offer him a tissue. I'm here to sign the discharge papers, Robert. That's all. He flinched at the use of his first name. Please don't call me that. I'm your father. My father died 12 years ago, I said calmly. He died the night he watched his wife throw his pregnant teenage daughter out into a storm, and didn't say a word. I was deceived, he pleaded, his hands shaking. Linda, she manipulated me. She told me you were lying. She made Caleb seem so perfect. I didn't know he was hers. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know, I said, my voice rising just a fraction. You saw the way he looked at me. You saw my grades. You knew who I was. But it was easier to believe the lie, wasn't it? It was easier to keep the peace in your perfect house than to protect your difficult daughter. He looked down at his lap. I was weak. I know that. But I've lost everything, Mia. The house, the money, Linda. I have no one. Please. You have done so well. I saw the news about your company. You have resources. Help me. Let me make it up to you. I almost laughed. Even now, at rock bottom, he was asking for something. You want me to save you? I asked. I'm your family, he whispered. I walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I saw my Porsche parked next to a beat-up sedan. When I was bleeding on the floor of a mechanic's shop, losing your grandchild, I said, my back to him, I had no family. I had a stranger named Andy who held my hand. When I was eating ramen noodles for dinner 3 years in a row to save money for tools, I had no family. I built my family, Robert. I built it with people who show up. People who believe me. I turned back to him. I have paid your medical bills, I said. Consider that the final settlement for raising me. But you aren't coming with me. You are going to that facility. You are going to live on your pension. And you are going to think about Caleb every single day. Mia, please. Goodbye, Robert. I walked out of the room. I heard him calling my name, but I didn't stop. My heels clicked on the linoleum floor, a steady, rhythmic beat. Done. 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 The final piece of the puzzle was the house. The bank put the Miller estate up for foreclosure auction 3 months later. It was a gloomy day, raining just like the night I left. I stood in the back of the crowd, wearing a trench coat. The auctioneer started the bidding. It was low. The scandal had tainted the property. People were superstitious. No one wanted to live in the house where the Miller monster had lived. Do I hear 1.5 million? The auctioneer asked. Silence. I raised my paddle. 2 million. Heads turned. It was an aggressive bid, far above the opening. I wanted to end it. Going once, going twice. Sold to buyer number 87. I walked up to the desk and wrote the check. A cashier's check. Paid in full. 2 days later, I stood in the driveway. The gate was open. The landscaping was overgrown. The windows were dark. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Floor wax and old potpourri. It smelled exactly the same. I walked through the empty rooms. The dining room where Linda had slapped me. The study where my father had turned his back. The staircase I had run down with my duffel bag. It was just a house. It wasn't a monster. It was just wood and plaster. I walked up to my old bedroom. It was empty now, stripped of furniture. I stood in the spot where it had happened. I waited for the panic to come. I waited for the ghosts to scream. But there was nothing. Just silence. And the sound of rain on the roof. My phone buzzed. It was Andy. Did you get the keys? He texted. I'm inside, I replied. What are you going to do with it? Burn it. I smiled. Burning it would be easy. But I was done with destruction. I wanted to build something. I typed back, no. I'm calling the contractors tomorrow. We're knocking down the walls. We're painting it bright yellow. And then I'm calling the women's shelter downtown. I wasn't going to live here. I was going to turn the Miller estate into the Sterling Sanctuary, a transitional home for young women escaping domestic violence. I was going to turn the place where I was destroyed into a place where other girls could be saved. I walked out of the room and left the door open. I didn't need to lock it anymore. The monsters were gone. 6 months later. The spring air in Connecticut is sweet, smelling of damp earth and blooming dogwood. It was a stark contrast to the gray November that had defined my life for so long. I parked the Porsche on the gravel path of the old hillside cemetery. It wasn't a well-known place. It was small, quiet, overlooking the valley where the river snaked through the trees. I walked up the hill, carrying a single white rose. I stopped in front of a small, simple stone marker. It wasn't a formal grave, there was no body to bury after all. But Andy had helped me place it there years ago. It read simply, Baby Miller. Too good for this world. I knelt in the grass. The knees of my jeans got wet, but I didn't care. Hi, I whispered. I have news. I traced the letters on the stone. We did it. They can't hurt anyone else. Caleb is in prison for 20 years. Linda got 8. The house is full of noise now, good noise. There are 6 girls living there. One of them, Sarah, wants to be a mechanic. She reminds me of me. A breeze rustled the trees, scattering white petals across the grass. It felt like a caress. "I know I couldn't save you," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "And I will carry that weight until the day I die. But because of you, I saved myself. And now I'm saving others. You weren't here long, but you mattered. You mattered so much." I laid the rose on the stone. I stayed there for a long time, just listening to the wind. For years, my grief had been a screaming void. Now, it was a quiet companion. It was a scar, yes, but scars are just proof that you survived something that tried to kill you. I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, rhythmic crunching on the gravel. I didn't flinch. I knew who it was. "I thought I'd find you here," Julian said. I stood up and wiped my eyes. Julian was standing there, hands in the pockets of his trench coat. He wasn't my employee anymore. Well, technically he was, but he was also the man who made me coffee every morning, and the only person I let drive my cars. "Is everything okay at the shop?" I asked. "The shop is fine. Marco is handling the restoration on that Jaguar. But there's a problem with the 911. I frowned. "What problem?" "I just tuned it. The passenger seat is empty," Julian said, a small smile playing on his lips. "And I have reservations for lunch at that place by the marina. The one you like with the lobster rolls." I looked at him. He was solid. Dependable. He knew all my darkest secrets, all my ugly history, and he looked at me like I was the sun. He didn't want to save me, he knew I had already saved myself. He just wanted to be there. "You're cheesy," I said, rolling my eyes but smiling back. "I'm effective," he countered. I looked back at the stone one last time. "Goodbye, little one," I whispered. Then I turned to Julian. "You're driving." He tossed me the keys. "No way. It's your car. I'm just along for the ride." We walked back to the car. The Porsche 911 Targa sat gleaming in the sun, a beautiful machine of metal and glass. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather creaked familiarly. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. That sound, the flat sixth symphony, it resonated in my chest. It wasn't just noise. It was the sound of competence. Of control. Of freedom. I put the car in gear. We rolled down the hill, leaving the cemetery behind. As we hit the coastal highway, I pressed down on the accelerator. The car surged forward, pinning me back in the seat. The wind whipped through my hair. To my right, the ocean sparkled, vast and endless. I thought about the girl who had walked this road 12 years ago, broken, bleeding, penniless. I wished I could go back and tell her. "Hold on. Just hold on. The pain is fuel. The anger is energy. You are going to build a life so big that the people who hurt you will look like ants beneath your boots." I looked over at Julian, who was laughing at something on the radio. I looked at the road stretching out ahead of me. I wasn't Mia Miller, the victim. I wasn't even just Mia Sterling, the mechanic. I was the driver. And for the first time in my life, the road was wide open. We need to talk about what happened here. This story isn't just a drama about revenge or fancy cars. It's a story about the dangerous silence of good people. My father, Robert, is the character that haunts me the most. He wasn't the one who assaulted me. He wasn't the one who plotted against me. But his crime was just as heavy, silence. He chose the comfort of a lie over the discomfort of the truth. He prioritized the image of a happy family over the safety of his own child. This happens every day. In families, in workplaces, in communities. We see something wrong, a golden child who pushes boundaries, a partner who manipulates the narrative, and we look away because confronting it is messy. We fear the disruption more than we fear the injustice. But here is the lesson I learned in blood: Family is not DNA. Family is behavior. You do not owe loyalty to people who abuse you, no matter how much blood you share. And you do not owe forgiveness to people who watched you bleed and did nothing. The most powerful thing I did wasn't getting rich. It wasn't buying the house. It was realizing that I was enough on my own. I stopped waiting for them to apologize. I stopped waiting for them to validate my pain. I validated myself. If you are holding onto a secret, or if you are the one looking away to keep the peace, stop. The cost of that peace is someone else's soul. Break the silence before it breaks you. I want to hear from you. This journey was long and hard, but sharing it with you makes it matter. What is the biggest lesson you took from my story? Is it about the strength of standing alone? The danger of blind loyalty? Or the power of rebuilding? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe that justice is worth fighting for, simply comment the word "good" below. Seeing those comments tells me that we are building a community that values truth over silence. Thank you for listening. Thank you for riding shotgun with me. I'll see you in the next video.